It's a pleasure to be with you all today. I'm so honored to have the opportunity to speak with you. My background includes doing turnarounds in business, government, and philanthropy. I've had the opportunity to work for philanthropists, billionaires who've been trying to fix a particular problem for US presidents as well as CEOs. And so my book focuses on how I used the manufacturing techniques I learned at Intel Corporation, and I combined those with the art of diplomacy that I learned at the State Department in the White House. Let's see if I can get this there. But to really understand who I am, you have to see this picture of how I started. Early and often, I was the odd girl out. I would find myself at the age of 21 in rooms with career admirals and generals, or hear a picture of me at the age of 28 at the US Army War College talking about national security with men who'd seen combat. I started my career at the Reagan Pentagon during the Cold War. The seats were man-size. My feet didn't touch the ground, and soon they came up with a nickname for me, which was Tinkerbell. If anyone has seen any of the Disney movie about Peter Pan, you know Tinkerbell. But I didn't get insulted. I embraced it because I knew that data and determination were my special weapons. What I learned how to do is to be utterly prepared before I walked into any room. I knew what the number one question was that needed to be asked. I did my research in advance, and I would wait until the lull in the conversation to ask the question that needed to be asked. And in America, we call that owning the elephant in the room, because you have to understand what the underlying cause of the problem is before you can actually fix it. Through that process, I learned how to make what mattered to me matter to others, because you need to be able to use data as well as partnerships in order to have those as your secret weapons to solve big problems. And so those talents enabled me to do turnarounds across multiple different industries, the auto industry, the State Department and White House, as well as the military industrial complex going into Intel Corporation and semiconductors. But what I learned the most is that when life is most complicated, the critical thing that you need to do is be highly, highly disciplined and highly focused. Early in my marriage, my husband was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer. He had cancer 8 times. He also had 2 autoimmune diseases, and we had just adopted our daughter. And what I learned during that period where he was going through 7 operations and his weight dropped to 96 pounds is that focus and discipline were required in order for me able to move forward with my business and with my personal goals. So I haven't been through a war like you all have, but what I do know from personal experience is that sometimes your goals and objectives may get delayed. Sometimes you may end up achieving them in a very different way. But if you keep your eye on the target and you keep your eye on that goal, you will be successful. In my book, I outline 4 steps for doing that. The first is visualize the future. Just ignore what's around you right now and keep in your mind's eye that photograph of what you want the world to look like. The second step in any turnaround is you have to break down the past. You have to figure out what still works in your current environment and what no longer does. And in a situation like you all are in today, what I would strongly advise, and I'll talk about this later on, is taking a moment to actually analyze what went wrong before the war started, because sometimes businesses aren't where you want them to be. So make sure that you calculate in history before where we are today. That's going to enable you to create a path from your present into your future. You're going to map out critical decisions, and you're going to map out the actions needed. You're going to play scenario planning. You're going to make decisions based on if the world looks like this, then these are the steps I'm going to take. If the world looks like that, these are the steps I'm going to take. By doing this process, what will enable you to do is to move forward with speed, confidence, agility, and heart. And I mention heart because in any major change, what we know and what you all know very well is that change impacts people. And people who've been through a great deal of change, it impacts them even more. And so you have to take into account how people are going to react to the changes that you might be making in the businesses that you have, or the community programs that you're building, or the government programs you're building. So let's talk about step number one. As I said, you want to describe your perfect world scenario. Let your mind be released from what you're looking at today and just keep in your mind's eye exactly what you want the world to look like in the future as it relates to that thing that you are building. In doing so, you want to identify what I call jobs 1, 2, and 3. You can't do everything. And especially during a very complex period of time, you need to choose that one thing that must happen in order for your organization or your business to survive and thrive. The other two things you need to focus on are what I call the backup singers. What are those other two elements that also need to be into place in order for you to focus on that number one thing? I learned that when I was at Intel Corporation during the late 90s. Intel in the United States had lost market share to the Japanese, and Intel focused on job one. Job one was overtaking and controlling the semiconductor market in the world. And the way that they did that was their primary focus. They let go a lot of other things. And through that process in the 1990s, they had 85% of the market share while I was working there. You're going to reframe success. Success isn't how you define it today. Success needs to be based on how you define it in that future state. And finally, as I said, you need to evangelize your vision. We started this conversation about walking in, doing the research in advance, asking the critical question that needed to be asked, and evangelizing what you see as the future, but basing that future on research and data. In any situation, vision is the critical ingredient to get you to the end state. When John F. Kennedy, 50 years ago, he was the president of the United States, announced that he was going to have a man walk on the moon. He made that announcement when the United States was in a crisis of confidence. Sputnik had just been launched by the Russians. A cosmonaut, Yuri Gagarin, had just circled the Earth. And all of a sudden, the US was no longer seeing its perfect world as the US being the technological superpower that it needed to be to bring about freedom and democracy and business and economies. And so Kennedy knew that he needed to have a bold vision. He needed to gain people's support and the scientists' support, both materially and emotionally. And through that bold vision and sticking to it and investing solely in that one thing, an American was the first to walk on the moon. Your second step in this process is that you need to break down the past. And what I mean by that is you need to understand what went wrong before the war in whatever you're managing, whatever you're doing, and then what went wrong during this time period of complex change. You want to look at those things separately. And you really want to make sure that you seek back and look at what it was that wasn't working already. And what I call this is auditing your assets. Basically, as we said, you can only do so many things. You've got your perfect world scenario. And so what you're doing is you're looking at what's in front of you. What assets do you have in the business or the organization that you're running? And then you're going to decide if those assets are going to enable you to meet your perfect world vision. And you're going to let things go. You've got to focus. You can only do so much. You have so many distractions right now that you need to let go of anything that doesn't help you accomplish that primary vision. But throughout the process of getting rid of things, you're going to reassure your customers, your investors, your partners, your voters, your community, whoever it is that needs to be assured that you are evangelizing a vision and you're doing the hard work and the necessary work to achieve that vision. And you're going to help them understand what changes you're going to make, which may be things that they care a great deal about, but you'll help them understand why you need to step forward in running your operation differently than you did before. And as I said, with this, you're always going to act with humility and compassion because you know that the changes that you're making may be that you're getting rid of something that someone cares very much about. We all make hard choices. And especially in a turnaround situation, you have to make hard choices. You can't do anything else. And sometimes that's hard because you know that hard choice is going to affect a colleague or it's going to affect a friend. But you need to be open and transparent with them, and the hard choice needs to be made. As I said before, you're what we say in baseball, winding up for the next pitch. Throughout this process, you're going to have a series of pitches. You're playing an entire game. You're going to constantly be ranking and rating. It's not like you just do it one time. You're going to do it every 6 months. You may do it every 4 months. During COVID, when all the pharmaceutical companies were going through so many changes, as was the medical healthcare infrastructure, what was recommended by JP Morgan is do your scenario planning and your ranking and rating every quarter. And so during complex change, you're constantly deciding what's important, what needs to go away. You're making decisions based on research and data, but you're getting rid of things along the way. If it doesn't work, dump it and keep moving forward, because that's what keeps you as a credible person in the role that you're in. In my book, I go through and I analyze why things go south in a business or an organization. And there are really some basic reasons that don't matter what time period or what's going on that always causes it. But as you're going back and you're assessing what you get rid of, how you rank and rate things, look at things this way. Sometimes organizations are built haphazardly. They're not built on a solid process. Some people think money can solve anything, and so people put a lot of money into something. But the reality is sometimes we do better when we have to work our way out of a box. The economics of the business may no longer enable you to meet the end goal. That may happen right now because supply chain issues, because of access to technology, access to capital. And so you may need to change the economics of your business to adjust to your current constraints. Some people like to read a lot of business books. I wrote a business book, so I'm okay with that. However, sometimes one-fits-all scenarios don't work for everybody. Because of where you are, the situation that you're in, you can't necessarily use somebody else's approach. So what you're going to have to do is adapt it to hit the goals that you have. Another thing that occurs is that people who founded something, they overstay their welcome. And during times of great change, there may be a leader who is very, very good for a particular period of time, but that individual may no longer be the right leader for your organization moving forward. You may no longer be the right person for your organization moving forward, and that's something that you need to reflect on, because you're a steward of an institution. You're there to help that institution during a period of time, but that institution has customers, it has people that it serves. And so you want to make sure that you have the right leadership in place for the situation that you currently find yourself within. And then other times, sometimes you just have to let something go because it no longer works, and you have to come up with a new idea. But that new idea may be in alignment. It actually may be the way that you actually reach your future goal, because you're developing a path, you're creating a decision tree. And what I'd recommend to you all, especially because you're going through so many changes, is have a couple of decision trees. Have your perfect world decision tree that enables you to say, if this happens, I go here. If this happens, I go here. And this is how it gets me to the end state. But you're also going to need a decision tree that takes into account situations that you find yourself within today, because change is happening on a rapid basis. And so you're going to play out the scenarios. You're going to say, you may come up with 4 different scenarios. If the world works out this way, this is what we're doing. If the world goes this way, this is what we're doing. You're prepared for that next inflection point. But by doing all the hard work, when that moment happens, when you come through that period of time where finally the sun is shining and the world appears to finally be where you need it to be, you'll have done all the hard work. What you're doing is you're preparing for the opening that allows you to run through it and implement all of the things that we just talked about. You're going to have the confidence to do that. And in that process, you're going to partner with people. You're going to make sure that you don't have to be all things to all people. You can't do everything well. So you're going to be developing partnerships, and you're going to develop those partnerships in anticipation that when you have the opportunity to run as fast as you can, that you've already got people who are running with you, that their goals are aligning with your goals. And that's where the importance of discipline and diplomacy come into play. As we all know, the path in life is not straightforward. So we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I know you're dealing with unbelievable ambiguity. So what I would just say is take the opportunities that are in front of you and make the most of them. Develop a best-of-class professional personal team. These are team members. These women who are on here today, those are the people that are going to be with you moving forward. You're going to help each other succeed. And I've been so impressed by Irina's research, which has said that you're prioritizing how you help each other through this incredibly difficult time period. And you're never giving up, but you're always going to be willing to regroup. Kindness and mentorship. And I know the next speaker is going to talk about mentorship, so I'll let her talk about this. But these are your friends. These are your colleagues. This is who you're linking arms with to succeed. Because everything that you do leaves your mark on the world. And I don't want you to underestimate the impact that you're having, even if you're taking small steps, and you have to take small steps right now. Each of those steps are deliverables that you're leaving. They're breadcrumbs you're leaving for the next generation of people. They're breadcrumbs for the people that are going to be working for you. So small steps are okay. Be proud of what you've accomplished, because you are leaving positive marks along the path. So very quickly, what you want to do is in your turnaround process, don't have assumptions. Things aren't turning out the way that you thought they were. They never do in life. They didn't for people during the pandemic. You want to take the time to engage with people. You want people on your side cheering for you. So you're evangelizing your vision, and you're going and you're meeting with people and telling them what you're going to do and why it's going to help them solve a problem. You're going to find people like those women who are here today that think like you do, that are willing to partner, that understand what it takes in order to help each other up the ladder. You're not going to treat every step like a battle, because the reality is you've already got a lot of complexity in your life. So let's not fight with each other. Let's agree to disagree and keep moving forward towards the goal. And most importantly, you're going to keep your commitments. And when you can't keep your commitments, you're going to let people know. And guess what? They're going to understand, because you're laying out a long-term process. You're playing a future game. You have a long vision ahead of you. So be proud of what you're achieving today. You're doing so much through incremental gains through every step of the process. And some nights you may go to sleep going, I can't keep doing this. But you have to think about your worst day within the spectrum of every day of your life. And I'll tell you, 10 years from now, you'll look back and you'll say, I'm so glad I did this work, because we achieved what we achieved. It may not have been on the timeline that we hoped, but we accomplished what we've set out to do. The world is with you all right now. Every woman I've spoken with in America, they want you to succeed. And so just know that we're here to help you succeed. And I'm happy to answer any questions if you want to send me notes after this on LinkedIn. And I just hope that there's a way that we can help you get the support you need to accomplish the goals you have. So thank you.